Welcome to Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance on the Central Coast today. We are joined by Andrew Carter. He is currently the city administrator, city manager for the city of Guadalupe, which is a small city in North Santa Barbara County, just on the line with Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo. He had been on the San Luis Obispo City Council for how many years?
6 years.
Okay, so he went from the city council as an elected official to city manager, but he has recently announced he is moving on.
That's right.
He is moving to the Central Valley to be with his significant other.
That's correct.
I congratulate you and her, I won't say her name on camera. She's private.
She'd kill me, but
She'd
anyway.
kill you. Let's go back a few years. Yeah. You were a very significant player in San Luis Obispo. You decided to move on and jump to Guadalupe, a city that's quite different from San Luis Obispo.
Polar opposite.
Give us a sense of how different they are.
Well, San Luis Obispo is a college town, so it's a wealthy community, well off. County seat. Guadalupe, just picture a city from the Central Valley magically plopped down on the Central Coast. So it's a poorer city, heavily Hispanic. We're in the Santa Maria River Valley, so it's ag-oriented. So they're completely night and day.
And when you look at the city, I've actually been through the city. Not a lot of commerce.
No.
I don't see any malls. I don't see any car dealers. I don't see any hotels. No. And why does that present a challenge?
Well, in California, as you know, cities are financed by two different things. One, sales tax. So to be well off, they need big box stores and car dealers, as you point out, and the TOT, the transient occupancy tax. We don't have a single hotel or motel in Guadalupe. We have a Subway and a Chevron, and that's the extent of chain anything that we have right at the moment.
And as you walked into City Hall, there had been investigations, grand jury reports, and essentially the city was on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, it was.
Well, I didn't know it at the time. I mean, the city had been investigated, and some of the elected officials for political malfeasance in the past. But the financial issues, it was struggling, but the key ones that I discovered had been covered up, and it took me about a year to realize and uncover them.
And what was interesting about what you uncovered is essentially there were accounting games being played.
Right.
It was a lot of interfund transfers and your classic bureaucratic tricks.
Right. Yeah. What I always focus on is that no one was personally enriching themselves. There was no embezzlement. And they were using special fund monies from funds like the Water Fund, the Lighting District Fund that had money, and using it to prop up the general fund.
Is that impermissible?
That's not allowed under several of the revenue streams. It's specifically forbidden. The Constitution, Prop 218, you have to use water funds for water purposes.
I see.
So it was not permissible from an accounting standpoint. Now, why was it being done? It was being done to prop up the general fund. What's the general fund? It primarily pays for police and fire protection.
Right. So the motives were
pure,
noble,
but it was against the rules.
So what did you do?
Well, so the primary thing we did is I discovered about $600,000 hole in our budget. So
this is a small city.
This is about $3 million budget.
That's a huge hole.
It's a huge hole in the budget. So what we did is we went to our voters and we passed 3 tax measures in the November 2014 election, 3 on 1 ballot by margins of 76 to 81%.
What were they taxing?
So the first thing is we added a sales tax increment. So many communities in the state have a small increment. Ours was 0.25%. The typical for the regular sales tax in California is 1%. So now we were getting 1.25%. We had a utility users tax of 5%. About half the cities in California have that, half don't. It was interesting in that it exempted large businesses, and so it had a cap of $4,500 a year. And so we have a very large agricultural processing firm that reached its cap after 2 weeks in the year. And then the other
But let me ask you about that, because there's this whole notion that California is business unfriendly, that our taxes and regulations are driving folks out of the state. Were you concerned that if you did that, the industry that keeps Guadalupe moving will vanish, will move.
Well, obviously you don't want to poke the tiger, but
Right.
as the CEO of this entity said, he said, we'd much rather be dealing with the city of Guadalupe than, quite frankly, dealing with the county of Santa Barbara.
So the business was fine with what you were, in the end.
Yes, they were accepted.
understood.
I mean, they could have politicked against
Right.
it. They have over 1,000 employees, and the bills in their paychecks and all that. They chose not to do that.
Right, and the third tax.
The third tax, and it also impacted them, was a gross receipts tax. So
Right.
50 cents on $1,000. So this entity is a $300 million entity. They had been paying a business license of $120 a year, and it went to $150,000.
And they were okay with that in the end.
Well, they
In the
accepted
end.
it.
In
Yeah,
the end. And
And they understood in the end
Right.
the reason, and they, as I said, they wanted to be part of the city. Particularly for them, the fire protection, the police protection, they're a half mile from City Hall, so that's very important to them.
Sure. At the same time, as you were arriving, there was a water crisis,
That's
a
right.
unique water crisis, specifically Memorial Day weekend. What happened in 2013?
In any rate, in my first year of office, or as the city administrator, Memorial Day weekend, I'd started in February.
Right.
The pump to our main well went down, so we came within about 12 hours of running out of water. And then at the end of October, one of our main sewer lines collapsed, going under a railroad. And so we had a sewer crisis as well. So actually one of the things I focused on beyond getting us our financial house in order is focusing on our water and sewer utilities. We did a master plan for both utilities in 2014 to determine the needs, both the capital improvement needs and the staffing needs. Then a rate study in 2015, which led to a Prop 218 process to put new rates in place, which actually the first, most cities you pass them and you have increments over 5 years.
Right.
The first one took effect on June 1st.
And while you have been acting as city administrator, you're not just a city administrator.
Yeah.
You have so many hats on.
Yeah.
I mean, in a city like San Luis Obispo, how many people are doing your job?
Oh, half dozen or more.
Right.
So at any rate, and this would be true of any small city, and it's a function of not having the funds. So beyond city administrator, I serve as the utility director for the water and sewer, solid waste manager, we contract with that, transit manager, we contract for that, public works director, community development director, chief building official, and the
You did
list.
it all.
IT manager.
You've done it all.
Yeah.
So why are
So I'm tired.
I can imagine. So, in the end, you must be proud of your
Extremely
accomplishments.
proud. Extremely
There's
proud.
no doubt that Guadalupe is on a much better footing
Right.
since you have arrived. I know love calls.
Yeah.
But what made you decide that after 3.5, 4 years, it's time to move on?
Well, it was both things going on in my
Right.
personal life, and quite frankly, my work-life balance had gotten totally out of whack, had gone a dead end, and I was tired. It's
Right.
like combat pay, and that again, I don't focus. That's not something that's unique to Guadalupe.
Right.
It would be unique. Any city that doesn't have the funds, they're going to have a city administrator who has to wear all the hats as well.
What's remarkable is when I was talking about Guadalupe 3-5 years ago, the notion was the city should disincorporate.
Right.
We don't hear that anymore.
No, well, actually, the grand jury of Santa Barbara County, the civil grand jury, recommended that we disincorporate
Right.
when they looked at us in 2015.
Even then,
Right.
As you were on
No,
the map.
that was their recommendation. So I discovered these financial irregularities. The Santa Barbara grand jury investigated them, and then their recommendation was the city to disincorporate. And the primary reason and why our voters voted for the tax increases was local police and fire protection.
Right.
So our police station and fire station are right at City Hall. Our policemen and firemen can get to any place in
So are
Guadalupe
we
in
still
5 minutes.
Are we still hearing discussions of disincorporation?
No, we haven't heard that from the grand jury, and I've talked to them since that study.
So what's next for Andrew Carter?
Well, I'm looking to stay in the public sector and close out my career. I'm 59. It's
You look good,
interesting.
man.
It's interesting. I got into it when most people are getting out.
Right.
But for hopefully a job not quite as demanding as the one I've had.
His name is Andrew Carter. He is finishing a successful run as the city administrator of the city of Guadalupe in Santa Barbara County. My name is Brad Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.